Hey guys, Gabthley97 again. This time a review of the 1/44 scale high-grade Universal Century Gabthley from the Zeta Gundam series. And for colors, we get some very nice down-to-earth ones. We have brown for the arms, the legs, the head. Then we get some very cool looking dark forest green for the skirt armor, the body, and even for the beam rifle. For some more standing out colors, we have some yellow here for the collar and also for the sides of the body. And some more standing out colors, we have very nice red for the thrusters, which are a bit all over the place. And finally, to wrap things up, we have gray for the beam cannons here on top, the joints, and some little details all over the place. For stickers, we get a few of them, but all of them are completely understandable. First of all, we have some for the mono eyes, and this already tells us something about the articulation. The eye, unfortunately, isn't going to move, but hey, with the way this head is designed, there's no way they were going to move on a high grade anyways. Then we have quite a few small yellow ones. We have one on top of the head here, the yellow pieces on the arms, well, on the sleeves of the arm, I guess. And then these round ones on every side of the leg. And some more yellow ones on the beam rifle. 4 in total. And we also have some very nice pink ones. 2 big ones here on front. And then 3 pink ones here on, well, I guess that's going to be the head of the bug in transformation mode. On to articulation, and it has some pretty interesting things going for it. The head, unfortunately, can only move side to side so much because of that high collar. And has some forwards and backwards chicken movement going on, so that thing isn't too articulated. But onto the arms. Now the shoulders at first aren't really going to do a lot. They go up about that far and they will rotate around. But this thing here looks like it can move, and well, if you pull it out, it will go forwards and backwards ever so slightly. Unfortunately, it isn't going to fix the upwards and downwards movement, but it is something. Then the shoulder armor itself will also go up and down a little bit, but that isn't going to help with that shoulder movement. Also, the beam cannons are on ball joints, so they will turn around ever so slightly. Then we'll rotate around below the shoulder. And the elbow joint is the interesting one, because normally it will move on one joint 90 degrees, pretty standard. But what you can do is pull this thing out, and suddenly you get a glorious double joint on that elbow. Now let's push that back in, there we go. The hands are in ball joints, will wiggle around, turn around, and do everything a ball joint does. Onto the lower body, and despite everything going on with the waist, it can actually rotate around a little bit. Not a lot, but hey, it is there. Then the skirt armor, and that is some pretty interesting stuff it's got going on. First of all, skirt armor itself is just on a ball joint, but it can go out far enough for the legs to go forward all the way. Backwards, however, is even better because these back skirts actually fold out of the way, allowing for a great split. If you can, of course, get that tail fin out of the way. There we go. So really, that is already some fantastic leg articulation to go out. About that far, will rotate around a little bit. And the funny thing is, the knees will also rotate around all the way. Then talking about the knees, they're actually very similar to the elbow joints in that normally they're just on, well, they are on a double joint right here, but normally they only go up about 90 degrees. However, once you pull this down, suddenly we get an extra joint and the articulation is increased tremendously. I have to say, I really love all of that extra articulation it's got going on. Yes, it's partly thanks to the transformation, but it still helps out a ton in mobile suit mode. Then the feet, we have the foot guard flap goes up and down. forwards a bit, backwards not as much, but still a bit, and then the toe will go down all the way and will go side to side and rotate around. Just gotta be careful that these things don't fall off. However, there is a very good reason for that, which will be covered later on with the transformation. So overall, the Gabthley has some absolutely fantastic articulation, especially considering the time, because let's not forget that this is only the third or second, depending on how you're counting, model kit in high grade with double elbow joints, and combined with everything else, the fantastic knee joints. For a high grade that transforms from this time, the Gabthley really has some fantastic articulation. Moving on to accessories, and sadly some parts literally fall apart here. Starting off with the beam sabers, the good news is we don't just get 2 beam sabers, we get 4 of them. 2 in each arm. So that is really cool. The problem is, he has kind of a tough time holding on to them. Just like this, no problem at all. It will stay in the hand absolutely perfectly because, well, the end is thicker than the handle. But once put them upside down, that handle is gonna go flying off. And that's even without the beam saber blade in it. But no, as long as you hold it normally, not too big of a deal. And we get 2 very nice, clear yellow beam sabers to go with them. We don't get 4 of them, but hey, he can only hold on to 2 beam sabers at any given time anyways. So just like that, that is going to work absolutely perfectly. A bigger problem is going to be the Theodine rifle, because these hands are very similar to the advance of Zeta hands, and people who know about those models know exactly what to expect. Put this together, and first of all, he can't really hold on to it. It just flails around all over the place, and it's already having a tough time holding on to it. And I haven't even tried putting it into the arm. So yeah, that is exactly the kind of things we're dealing with. Also, removing these hands feels extremely dangerous. The problem is it's not a polycap and this hand just doesn't want to stay together. After 5 minutes of fiddling around, this is the best I could get it. And just look at the gap in between the 2 parts. It's every bit as bad as the Hazel hands, and all I can say about it is, what a miserable hand. They screwed up. They totally screwed up. And the worst news of all is that, yes, these hands use ball joints, but these ball joints are thinner than the normal ball joints. So you can't just get, say, a weapon set, use these hands and fix the issue. No, you're gonna have to do some working on that ball joint in order to get it to fit on there, or work a new joint in there in order to accommodate the new hand. Either that, or you're gonna have to glue it together, because this hand is absolute horrible. So let's just pull this out and quickly forget about these things ever existed and go back to the normal holding hands, because of course if you want to use a Theodine rifle, there are more options. Because, going back to the holding hand, the Theodine rifle also doubles as a spear, or I guess you could call it a bayonet, because, well, the thing is attached there. Simply put this in here. There we go. Pop this back in there, and this is gonna hold a hell of a lot better. And really, I'd forgotten all about that horrible trigger finger hand, just because this is the way I've been displaying him the entire time. And if you're gonna display him with a Theodine rifle, I highly recommend doing it like this. Either that or gluing the trigger finger hand together, whichever one you choose. Fiddly hands aside, it's time to move on with the transformation, where things once again start looking up. And one thing that's gonna be very handy for the transformation is this action base. The coolest thing about it is when you turn it around, on the bottom, you can store all of the leftover parts with this machine. Well, leftover, all of the spare parts. Never ever want to see the hand again? Simply put it in there, and there you go. Only want to use one beam blade, put the spare one there. The second one can go right there, and in order to mount this guy on, the actions that you will have to remove some covers, they will go right here. This is the adapter for the mobile armor mode. We'll store right there. Everything you have to remove from this guy can be stored on this base, except for the feet, which we're going to remove right now. So the first transformation this guy does is reveal the grabby claws that are inside of the legs, and this is where, this is why it's important that the leg armor is easy to remove, because, well, you will have to remove them for the transformation. Simply pop off the leg. The one thing I do not like about this first transformation is that for some reason the feet just kind of vanish into thin air, never ever to be seen again. So the first thing you have to do is extend the leg, and this is where you have to be a bit careful. There we go, clicks out, and turn this around. That goes like that, forward, rotate this around, and then these claws will fold out ready to grab onto the Zeta Gundam. And then simply reattach this. Let's see, this thing is supposed to go, oh, other way around. On there, and then the other one. In it goes, and then right here, this thing removed, and then we can mount him on to the action base. There we go. One piece of advice with these legs is that if the top joint is still flopping around, you still have to push it a bit harder. It really has to make that second click to become solid again, because otherwise it is going to flail around all over the place. And now to go with the full mobile armor transformation. Push the head forward a little bit, bring out the bug eyes, and the head gets hidden really well with this thing. I really like that, what they've got going. And then turn him around. Now these two things are covered by two of these covers. The thing is, they're very hard to remove. It can be done, but it's going to take a minute or so of fiddling, and it is best to have some nails going, because otherwise it is going to be rather difficult. And once again, gonna have to pull this out, and that's one thing this model kit has a lot of pushing and pulling. But so far, it doesn't really seem like it has become any weaker, because all of those pull and push joints, they really have nice solid clicks. So when you're pulling it, you will feel when you did it, and you will feel like when it pops out of that joint and then pops into the other one. And then fold these up. These go out, go around again, and these two you kind of have to line up. There we go. Like that. These legs will once again have to be turned around. So the transformation, the first time you're doing this, I must say it was a bit, well, only the first time around, it was a bit difficult trying to figure out where everything went exactly. But once you do this for like the second time or so, it does become a lot easier, because it is logical, all the things you have to do. So let's see, then here this was pulled out. This thing mysteriously appears again out of nowhere, because like I really don't know what the deal with that is, where that foot is supposed to be stored. I mean, I guess you could just have it there in that grabbing motion. I mean, why not just have it there regardless? But hey. And then this all kind of goes up like that, and this goes down in order to kind of hide the foot. Almost there, simply pull him off again. This slides forward. And then all that is left to do is put on the Feyadin rifle. This goes. Oh, and oh, that wasn't supposed to come up with the thing. Come on, go back on there. There we go. Line up the rest a bit. And as I said, all that's left now is the Feyadin rifle. Pop this up, that stays down, and this goes into the little indent there. And then the handle is going to go right on there. And unlike the hands, that is actually going to be able to hold on to it. Just be careful. And click, it goes. There we go. And this is obviously also where that adapter once again comes into play. Pop it on here. And in case anyone is wondering, yes, this is the same style as the action base, as a action base number 2. So if for some reason you wouldn't want to use the included one, but an other action base, you can do that. And I have to say, for a high grade, this is definitely one of the best transformations I've seen. It's solid. It is easy to pull off, but it's still complicated enough. And it perfectly replicates the anime feel. This is absolutely fantastic. And on top of that, it does look pretty damn good. Really nails that kind of bug-like feel that the Gabthley has going for it. And finally, for completion's sake, quickly a bit more about the action base. Of course, it can rotate around all the way on that peg joint. And now we've got 2 swivel joints, one for left and right, and then one right here for forwards and backwards. However, mine is extremely tight because it has to hold on to the Gabthley in its mobile armor mode. If you just want the Gabthley in normal mode, well, you don't have to make it as tight and you can still have it relatively loose. But as you can see, a lot of the weight of the Gabthley is to the back. So if you don't have this joint extremely tight, yeah, the Gabthley is going to cause this thing to be extremely floppy. As always, the inevitable question is, do you want to buy this? And for 1,600 yen, the answer is a resounding yes. You know how sometimes you buy something and you don't really know what to expect and it turns out to be completely awesome? Well, that's kind of what happened with the Gabthley with me. I really didn't know what to expect. It looked okay, but man, having built it, it's fantastic. Sure, it has a few problems, mainly with the trigger finger hand that falls apart way too easily and has no structural integrity whatsoever. And the biggest problem with that hand is that you cannot replace it with a normal one because of that ball joint. However, that is completely overshadowed by all of the other awesome things this thing has to offer. And for me, it ticks all of the boxes necessary to be a fantastic transformable mobile suit model kit. First of all, the structural integrity. As both mobile suit and mobile armor, this thing is completely solid. Just like any normal mobile suit model kit would be. On top of that, it's not a parts former, it's a transformer. Sure, some of the parts have to be taken off and put back, but that's completely normal for what it is. It's still a complete transformer. Combined with the structural integrity this thing has, it's fantastic. I really love how they managed to do it with those popping in and popping out things they've got going on. Fantastic. Talking about them, look at that detail this thing has going for it. It's really a great looking machine. And once again, for 1,600 yen, all of the things you're getting, all of those little extra things, that detail, the action base, the ability to store stuff underneath the action base. I know it's all just little things, but they all add up to make a fantastic value for this thing. And really thinking about all other transformable mobile suits, most of them are in this price range, or especially the more modern ones, are much more expensive. And really, when you think about it, they don't offer that much. Because think about it, for 1,600 yen, a transformable mobile suit, what are you getting? Are you getting an action base? Not with a lot of them. And of course, we can't forget about the fantastic articulation this thing has to offer in mobile suit mode. It was mind-blowing for the time, and it has held up very well today. It's easily on par with some of the more modern day model kits, if not better. Finally, for some size comparisons, here he is next to the Gabthley and the Zeta Gundam. And as you can see, it's also a pretty bulky machine. It's got the size, it's got some extra buff with those shoulders, and overall, it is so worth of its price. Now let's not forget about that extra action base we're getting with him. Let's put the Zeta Gundam aside. Here he's next to the Zeta Plus. And finally, put these two away, and let's put him next to the standard sized Gym Custom and the always bulky Zaku 3. And hey, when you take into account those beam cannons on his shoulders, their size ain't that different. So that's all for this review, and see you guys next time.